This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like, to check you have the tickets in your wallet first before you drive 2 hours to the big game. Seriously, you had one job. Now the closest you'll get to the 50-yard line is parking lot D. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Whether you're ordering wings for the game, whipping up a 7-layer dip, or ordering pizza, there's something about football that makes you want to eat. And this football season, Uber Eats has the best deals on game day food. No matter what you're craving, from 2-for-1 pizza to buy one, get one wings, Uber Eats will be dropping new deals each week, all season long. Uber Eats, official on-demand delivery partner of the NFL. Order now. Terms and conditions apply. See app for details.
When I wake up, well, I know I'm gonna be the man who wakes up next to you. When I go out, yeah, I know I'm gonna be the man who goes along with you. If I get drunk, well, I know
Welcome to the Sooner Nation podcast. He's Caleb. I'm Matt. We're here to talk about the big one, Oklahoma and Texas. A huge game for the Sooners and the Longhorns, who come in ranked number one in the nation. Caleb, there's a bang load of information, just a bang load of information that we're going to need to talk about as we get into this. I'm going to let you decide where we start. We got to the injury report. We've got a bunch of notes and tidbits. Which way do you want to go first?
I say let's just get the injury report knocked out. I don't think that should take too much time.
Well, it's daunting as it was 2 weeks ago going to Auburn. Jaden Gibson obviously out. Jalil Farouk obviously out. As we said last week, I guess on the weekend podcast, Nick Anderson is out. Andrell Anthony is out. I was really hoping Gentry Williams could kind of work his way back in, at least get a questionable, but he's out. And then obviously Kendall Dolby, Garen Hatchett out. If you're looking for something that's of positive note, it's that Deion Burks is listed as questionable. Again, going back to what I said on the Sunday podcast, I think Burks plays in this game. What's your thought?
I agree, and I think he is really needed. Another big takeaway that talk positive side is Taylor Tatum is not even listed, so that means he's a go. That
Yeah.
means he's going to be a go for Saturday night, and that's going to be huge, just because he has looked to be one of the best running backs in that room, and getting him back is going to be a big piece of this offense, especially if Burks can't squeeze it out and come out on Saturday.
Yeah, that's a huge note about Taylor Tatum. That's a good pickup on your part. Now, Oklahoma comes in number 18, Texas obviously number 1 in the nation. Now, here's some interesting stats when you get into the breakdown of this game. Oklahoma has won in general. Oklahoma has won 5 of the last 6 meetings against Texas. They've won 11 of the last 15. And if you go all the way back to the last 25 years, they've won 17 of the last 25. Since the turn of the century, the Sooners are 4-3 in this series when Texas is ranked inside the top 5 in the AP. And then here's the big one. Oklahoma has won 4 in a row. It's on a 4-game winning streak against Texas when both the Longhorns and the Sooners are ranked in the AP poll. Can you draw anything from that? I mean, is this one of those things where you like history and stats? I know you get into sports wagering and you break down point spreads and all that stuff. When you look at just a point spread and a value, do you look at stuff like that? Or do you just say, it is what it is?
Not for a game like this. Typically, yes, but I mean, this is not a game where necessarily the best team always comes out on top. I think back to Baker Mayfield's first year and Charlie Strong. That team had no business beating that Oklahoma team, but they did.
Yeah.
Even going back a couple years, Kyler Murray, slow offense start. Texas hits a walk-off field goal to win it. That rematch in the Big 12 championship, Oklahoma wins by double digits. So the best team doesn't always win this matchup. It's you can't you got to throw that out for this type of game. There's not too many games you can say that about, but the Red River Rivalry is definitely one to where you throw everything out. It's who's going to be more motivated and who's more prepared. That's the team who wins. And I do like Oklahoma's odds just because I feel like there's a lot of arrogance coming out of that Texas locker room right now.
Well, and that's where you look at the big target on your back. I do look at things like, for example, last week, Tennessee and Arkansas on our Friday locks. I picked Arkansas to cover that spread just because Tennessee has typically struggled in that venue, and they struggled again, lost that game. So I do look at things like that, but it's a fantastic point that you bring up in the terms of the uniqueness of this game. It's in the mutual site, all the state fair, everything that goes into it. This is not a normal average game. And I would go even further back than what you did because I'm old, to the John Blake year, man. When John Blake years, when John Blake and that's had no business beating Texas. They forced into overtime. Allen runs in for the touchdown, and the Sooners upset the Longhorns. Was the most significant win of the John Blake era, in my opinion. So you come in here and you look at the winning percentages of these two programs, Oklahoma and Texas. They rank 5th and 7th, respectfully, in all-time winning percentage. And it's just there's so much uniqueness about the history of these teams and these programs that when you bring it into the Cotton Bowl, you literally throw all of that out the window. Here's something that you and I kind of hinted at last week on the last episode was that since they began to play each other every year, beginning in 1929, this is the first season since Oklahoma and Texas had a bye week immediately before they played each other. So they've never both had a bye week right before they come into this game. And then that just adds another unique perspective into the mix here. I've been going to this game since the 90s. You've been obviously weren't even born then, but you have a history of going to this game. You were there in the Big 12 championship when they met. You got the Caleb Williams comeback game under your belt. Is that your favorite moment in the history of this rivalry, the Caleb Williams comeback?
Are we talking about just games we experienced personally, or just any type moment?
Let's go with games that we've been at first, and then you tell me a moment maybe beyond that might top it.
Yeah, so I think the Kennedy Brooks, the iconic forget the field goal, I'll win
Right.
it with a touchdown. Just because I've been to a lot of football games, been to basketball games, I've never heard an arena where a stadium just erupts like that. And it was just a great moment. And then the Trey Brown safety in the Big 12 championship was really close second for me.
That Trey Brown safety that's an iconic play. And again, we talk about everything that's unique about this rivalry because that was the championship type setting. That wasn't just the normal game in the Cotton Bowl that was played at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. The Big 12 title was on the line. Texas had won the regular season game. Oklahoma comes in looking for something to prove. And that Trey Brown safety, just a huge, the Sooners already had momentum, but then that just kind of even put the nail further into the coffin, if you will. There have been so many great moments in our lifetimes of this game. And I'm sure anybody listening to the podcast has their own personal moment, whether they were there in person or whether they saw it on television. For me, it's never, you never say never, but for the last 24 years, my moment has been that 2000 game where Oklahoma just, stomped the dog snot out of the Longhorns 63-14 on their way to the national title. And that was, to me, obviously I was around in the 80s when Oklahoma won the last national championship in 85, but that was that moment for me, that 2000 season, when you look at how bad that they beat Texas. And that's when you first, to me, that's when that you really first thought, hey, they're going to win a national title. They keep playing this way. They're a national title team. And that's, that's one of those things that will always stick with me as one of my favorite moments.
Yeah.
I think, go ahead.
I would say, yeah, and unfortunately, I don't remember that season. I was like 3 months old, but yeah, I mean, I'm waiting for a moment like that in my lifetime. That I can be like, yeah, this team can go win a national championship.
I think that's again, stepping away from this game for a second. That's such a great thought because you are in your mid-20s almost, right? You're 24. But I mean, you've not seen Oklahoma win a national championship. You've seen them play for it, but not win it. And they won in the 70s. You had to wait about 10 years from the win in the 80s. Then you had to wait 15 years for them to win in the year 2000. And now it's been 24 years. And as much as I love this program and this team, obviously, this is not a national championship season for the Sooners. So it's going to be at least one more year before you can start talking about hanging another banner and so forth. When you look at some key storylines to this game, I'm a nerd. You know that. I'm a stat nerd. Oklahoma has beaten the AP's #1 team on 7 different occasions. Now, it was going to be, I'm counting, there's 5 teams. There's 5 teams that they've beaten on this. So do you want to try to guess any of the teams? I'm curious if you can. I'm going to give you 3 guesses to name a team that Oklahoma played when they were the #1 team in the nation and they beat. So I'm going to give you a shot.
Nebraska.
Yep. They've beaten them 3 times. Who else you got?
I'm trying to think. Was Missouri #1?
Missouri was #1. In fact, the last time Oklahoma won against the top-ranked team in the nation was 2007 when they beat Missouri. Was at 38-17 in that Big 12 championship game. So you got 2. That's good. Now I'm going to give you a hint here because now you're stepping out of none of these other 3 teams were ever in a conference with Oklahoma.
No, was this like postseason or regular season?
No, this is just playing against the AP #1. It could be postseason or regular season.
I'm gonna go. Trying to think here. So I'm guessing I'm gonna have to go back quite a bit to like the 80s.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go back before your time.
So I'm gonna go Miami.
Nope.
That's
strike 1.
Florida State.
Strike 2.
Man.
The AP #1. Well, I mean, my Mets just advanced to the National League Division Championship Series, so we're doing baseball rules here. You got 2 strikes against you. Got to protect the plate here, Hofeld.
Man, just trying to think.
I will give you a hint. I'm going to give you a hint since you got 2 strikes against you. This is going to be such a softball. A former Oklahoma head coach is currently the head coach of this program.
USC.
There you go. You got 3 of the 5. Now you got 2 left.
For some reason, I know this wrong, but I want to say Penn State.
Penn State is one, the 1985 in the Orange Bowl. You got 1 left. They're in the Big Ten now. They're not an original member of the Big Ten, but they're in the Big Ten.
Not original member.
Tua's little brother is the quarterback, or was the quarterback there.
Maryland.
Yep. So Nebraska and Maryland, Penn State, Missouri, and USC have all fallen to Oklahoma when they were the #1 team in the nation. Let me ask you, we're talking about stats that may or may not matter. I think this one does. Brent Venables has faced Texas 15 times as a member of Oklahoma's coaching staff, and he's 9-6 against the Longhorns. how much do you think having experience from the sideline in this game matters in terms of preparing the players on what to expect and really what's at stake?
I think it goes it's a pretty big part of this game. Going back to that Caleb Williams comeback, I'm pretty sure that was Steve Sarkisian's first year as
Right.
head coach of Texas. And I'm not saying that if he was there a couple more years that they control that game, but you kind of saw, for me, I think that one of the big keys to that game was there was like 13 seconds left to go. They were in their Texas was on their side. They go ahead and run one more play going into the fourth quarter. We stop them, and then next thing you know, Casey Thompson is on our end on a third and long, and that play just goes nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think going back to that is, maybe Steve Sarkisian's like, okay, let's just kind of get one more playoff, get to the quarter, instead of thinking, okay, they're about to be into that side of the field
Right.
to
Right.
where it's no longer a home environment, it's now a road game environment. So I do think that that plays a big factor.
That's a great point. And obviously when you say our end, you mean that side of the Cotton Bowl, that's that tunneled end that's dominated by Oklahoma fans. You mentioned Casey Thompson. One of the big storylines in this game is the you know the guy who's 2 spots ahead of Casey Thompson on the depth chart, Michael Hawkins Jr., slated to become the 7th Oklahoma quarterback as a freshman to start this game, but he's the first true freshman. Now we've seen his athleticism, we've seen his arm, we've seen the decision making, but are you nervous about a true freshman going into this game as the starting
Absolutely,
quarterback?
absolutely. And it kind of gives me a little more comfort knowing that he's already played on the road on at Auburn. So he has that kind of road mentality already. It kind of gives me comfort that his dad has played in this game. And
That's a good point.
I know that his dad can never fully explain what's about to happen, but there's definitely his dad has some wisdom he can share. So yeah, it there's things to be concerned about, but there's also things I'm like, it's not his first road game, whatever you want to call it. So there's pros and cons to both sides of it.
Talk about this is kind of dumb, but talk about you grew up in my house. You watched Oklahoma football every Saturday. You didn't have a choice. You became a fan. You went to games in Norman. I made you wait, maybe too long, but I made you wait before you went to the OU Texas game. But you heard me talk about it. You heard me talk about it. You heard the stories about it and so forth. But then you get there for the very first time as a fan. How much of what you were told by your father and those around you just went out the window as soon as you got into the Cotton Bowl and saw that for the very first time? How much of it was what you expected, and how much of it was so far beyond what you expected?
I mean, a little bit of both. My first ever time I sat on the Texas side.
Right.
So it's kind of
And you did not sit with me, by the way,
I did
right?
not. No, no, no. I did not sit with you. I It was a group of four of us. We were all OU fans, so we just got the tickets on the Texas side. And um I'm pretty sure it was Mac Brown's final year at Texas when he beat us. So, it was a little bit different from than the next couple times where I sat on the OU side, but it's stories doesn't do this game justice. Watching this game on TV does not do this game justice.
Now amplify all of that to being the starting quarterback for the Sooners going into this game. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
amplify that because you're the guy who's the hopes of Oklahoma winning literally ride on your shoulders. And we talked about a guy like Deion Burks, on when he was listed as probable now. Deion Burks has 26 receptions on the season, which is the most ever by a player in their first 4 games of his Oklahoma career. Dude is absolutely vital to what's going to happen on Saturday for the Sooners. We've got more to talk about with Oklahoma's strengths as they go into this game against the Longhorns in the Cotton Bowl on Saturday. We'll be right back after this.
Imagine what's possible when learning doesn't get in the way of life. At Capella University, our game-changing FlexPath learning format lets you set your own deadline so you can learn at a time and pace that works for you. It's an education you can tailor to your schedule. That means you don't have to put your life on hold to pursue your professional goals. Instead, enjoy learning your way and earn your degree without missing a beat. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu.
Oklahoma and Texas, 2:30 kickoff Saturday from Dallas, the Texas State Fair. Let's talk about a little bit of Oklahoma's offensive and defensive strengths, starting with the offense. Caleb, one thing that we talked about in the last episode of this podcast was the quarterback position is a little bit of a reset. I think through the first 3.5 games of Jackson Arnold, again, not a knock on Arnold. It is what it is. You couldn't list the quarterback position as a strength, but now you've got Michael Hawkins Jr. back there, and you want to list the quarterback position as a strength, but it's just, I don't know that we're ready to do that yet. Now, in the 2 games he's appeared in, the SEC games that he's appeared in, he's 21 of 33 in passing. That's 64% for 293 yards and a touchdown. The big thing here is no interceptions. He also has run the ball 26 times for 91 yards and another score. Oklahoma's offense, there's not been a lot with this offense that you can say, yep, that's their identity. Yep, that's their strength. Yep, that's what they do. But you saw Michael Hawkins Jr. through the second half of the Tennessee game and then the Sooner Magic at Auburn. And you kind of you got to say, I think after 6 quarters of football, he is the identity of the Oklahoma offense, is he not?
Yeah, and I'm gonna disagree with you. I think we can call him a strength. His ability with his legs is a big strength because we saw Auburn do is you have to put a spy on him. And I get that we were banged up and coming in with having our 2 running backs, coming in hopefully having Deion Burks back. That's going to just open up. That's going to be one less person that he has to worry about downfield.
Yeah.
Because that spy has to play. And I just don't feel like Texas is going to play a spy. They could, but I just feel like that's not what their game plan is going to be. And I just feel like that's even more of a bonus for this Oklahoma offense because if he gets loose, we saw his speed.
Mm-hmm.
We saw what he can do at Auburn. We've seen what he can do throwing on the run. His ability with his legs opens up whole new chapters for this offense. So I do think we can call him a strength.
Man, I'm speechless here because I want to call him a strength. I haven't seen enough. Even if they lose, but Michael Hawkins does what he's done against Tennessee and Auburn, even in a loss, you could walk away from this game saying, yep, the quarterback position is a strength. I just don't know that I've seen enough through 6 quarters. Now, you brought up the idea of the spy, and that's such a unique, I feel like I've used that word a lot in this podcast, but that's because here's the thing. I feel like defensively, you have to spy Michael Hawkins. You have to. To not do it is just it's the epitome of arrogance. Now, Texas has a great defense. Statistically, they're the best scoring defense in the country. So they have a great defense, but to leave Michael Hawkins Jr. unaccounted for, I don't see how that's a possibility. Now, the flip side of that, the dangerous side of that is if you do give a spy and Hawkins is able to get past that spy, it's usually a big, big game. So it's a catch-22, if you will. But I mean, I would love what you said. You don't know that Texas is going to spy him. I would love for them not to. Because that means that there's a big play coming. I think he's shown too much on film with what we've seen with his legs. I mean, think about the touchdown that you take away against Tennessee. Still enough that he's shown what he can do with that play, even though he didn't technically cross the goal line. Then the big play against Auburn. there's no way, in my opinion, that you don't spy him unless you just are incredibly arrogant and you're going to blitz the crap out of him. Now, if you're going to blitz like crazy, then yeah, maybe you don't spy. You're just going to hope that you get home with the blitz. But I'm willing to say that Hawkins is the identity of the offense. I'm just not ready to go all the way in to say that this is a strength yet. I want it to be. I think it will be. I just need to see more. Am I being too critical, or is that fair?
I mean, I think it can be fair, but I think from what we've seen in those 6 quarters, he's definitely a strength to this offense.
Well, we absolutely know what the strength is of the Oklahoma defense, and that is the turnovers. The Sooners have registered 5 interceptions, and they lead the nation with 8 fumble recoveries. That's 2 more than they had all of last season. And here's a crazy stat, is that no other team has had more than 6 fumble recoveries this year. So Oklahoma, not only are they leading the nation, you go down from 8 to 6 to find the next closest team. Obviously, we saw with the Auburn game the importance of turnovers, but man, Texas may have the best scoring defense statistically in the country, but there's definitely not a team that has a defense that's more opportunistic than what we've seen from Oklahoma through 5 games.
Yeah, and not that it's the way that they play, and I know that there was a couple of chances to tack on some turnovers in the Auburn game that they just missed. And that's something that's going to have to be cleaned up. I think about the fumble that was forced in the Auburn game where their quarterback was able to just jump right back on it. That just cannot happen in this game. And, if I believe that they're going with Quentin Ears, and if he throws it and it hits your hands, that it has to be a pick. And this defense needs to take every opportunity that this Texas offense gives them.
I think I agree with you. And I think if you're looking at one more way to complement this team, it is that never say die mentality. The Auburn game, it was, I don't remember exactly. There's less than 9 minutes left in the game, and they're down 21-10. But then they come back and they score 17 points during that time frame to win 27-21. Not only was it the first ever SEC victory in conference for this team, but it showed, it got everybody talking about Sooner Magic. It put them into the bye week on a high note, that maybe you think they've got some things figured out. But I think you love the never say die mentality, but when you're looking at areas for improvement going into this game against Texas, I think they have to get the offense going earlier than what we saw them do against Tennessee and what we saw them doing against Auburn. You got Michael Hawkins with the big touchdown on the opening drive against the Tigers, and then you really didn't see much from this offense until the last 9 minutes of the game. You can't have that drought. You cannot have that drought against Texas in this environment, in this rivalry.
Not only that, but it goes back to what we talked about in that podcast after the Tennessee loss. You got to give this defense some time to rest.
Yes.
3 and outs this Texas offense is going to be high paced and they're going to go fast.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to move the ball as quickly as you let them. Slowing down and allowing your defense to catch their breath. Even if you go 3 and out and take up a couple minutes, that's better than going 3 and out and taking a minute. Like, it's going to have to be slow down. Let's get our reads. Let's get Michael Hawkins comfortable, and let's make sure we have the best play call plus best play design possible. I don't want to see much of this RPO offense that we've seen. We didn't really see much of it against Auburn. We have to slow it down, and like you said, this offense has to get going.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it's just getting down and kicking field goals, that's better than nothing.
I'm going to say this about the RPO. I think you have to put a little bit back in there, just because you saw them take very limited. Almost take it away completely against Auburn. But I think it has to be there to be a threat. So I think that you see this offense reinstall, put back in some RPO options in this game, just because if they know you're not going to do it, that puts you at a disadvantage. But if you do it, even if you don't do it well, if you do it, they still got to play for that. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When it's there as a threat, maybe not even a good threat, but when it's there as a threat, it makes that second level of the defense pause just long enough that might give you an advantage if you can get over the top of them. So for that, I'm saying I agree with what you said. It definitely didn't work with Jackson Arnold, but I think you got to put it back in there for just a little bit, if nothing else, for Michael Hawkins to make him that much more dangerous with what he can do with his arm.
I could agree with you on that.
Defensively, it's hard to thank you, by the way. Defensively, it's hard to like pinpoint mistakes and things that can, that this defense needs to improve on. But there have been small coverage mistakes. We saw it against Houston. We saw it against Tennessee, and we saw it against Auburn. Now, some of that is guys being out of position. Some of that is that guys just being bodied up by more physical receivers. But the reality is those small mistakes, this defense can dominate 90% of the snaps, but you can still turn a game. They can be killers if that 10% of the snaps that they come at the right time. And so I believe in this Texas offense. Now, I don't know what's going to happen with Quinn Ewers. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit, but I believe in the Texas offense. I believe they're a potent, powerful offense. And I think this Oklahoma defense has to be as close to perfect as they possibly can be. You mentioned if the ball's on the ground, you've got to get it as a defender for the University of Oklahoma. If you're a defensive back or a lineman or a linebacker and the ball hits your hands, you have to get it. You have to secure every opportunity and you have to play every coverage perfectly. That's your recipe to win this game, right?
Yeah, 100%. And our defense has to play clean. And I get that we've been high on this defense, but they're going back to Auburn, going back to Tennessee. There were so many missed opportunities, not just on turnovers. There's a couple of times where our linebackers, whether it's Kip Lewis or someone else that got in the backfield. I know Kobe McKenzie had a few times where he was there to make the play and just whiffed. You cannot do that in this game.
Right.
Not just because it's gonna give Texas some extra yards, but it's gonna give the other half of the stadium momentum. It's gonna give them energy. Big plays just have to be limited, and when OU's defense gets opportunities for big plays, we have to capitalize.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly. So give me two players on each side of the ball that you want to keep an eye on that are going to be factors in the game on Saturday. Starting on offense, give me your two guys.
Can I pick Hawkins?
You can pick Hawkins. Yes.
So I'm going to go Hawkins, and I'm going to go Bauer Sharp.
Oh, I like Bauer. I like that because, I'm high on Bauer Sharp, so I like that pick.
I think that's a guy that could slip underneath the radar and kind of, I think back to that 2017, 2018 OU Texas game where OU was down and then Baker Mayfield finds Mark Andrews wide open. And I feel like I'm not saying that Bauer Sharp is anywhere close to Mark Andrews, but I think that he can slip out. He can be forgotten about, and he can make a big play every now and then.
My favorite thing, because I've seen that play, and I'm sure Oklahoma fans have seen that play so many times. My favorite thing to do now when I watch that play is I don't even watch Mark Andrews anymore. I watch the Texas sideline and I watch the up into the stands, just the player reactions on the sidelines, and then obviously the reactions of the fans as Mark Andrews is heading to the end zone. I agree with you on Michael Hawkins. I think, I said it earlier in the podcast that literally the hopes that Oklahoma has to win this game rest on his shoulders. But I'm going to go with Deion Burks. And the reason why is I think he makes things happen. It gives you you're not going to have Nick Anderson, obviously. You're not going to have Andrell Anthony, but you do have a playmaker out there. You've got a reliable playmaker in Deion Burks. And And even if they use him as a decoy to make things happen for JJ Hester, to make things happen for Bauer Sharp, it's Dion Burks being on the field makes a difference. And that I'm anticipating you saw what he could do, what Michael Hawkins can do with limited weapons at Auburn. And I think you brought this up in the last episode, Caleb, that even though the tight ends messed some things up, there was the potential there for them to have statistically an even better game than what they had because of penalties taking big plays off the board. But now you put another playmaker out there and it opens things up a little bit more for Michael Hawkins. And that's the value of Dion Burks. On the defensive side of the ball, I'm going to go with two guys up front, and that's Grayson Halton and R. Mason Thomas. Through the first 5 games of the season, these two guys have teamed up for 10 tackles for loss and 8 quarterback sacks. I think the key to beating Texas is going to be to wreak havoc in their offensive backfield, to do what they've done. You mentioned yourself, Caleb, in previous podcasts about getting to Quinn Ewers, making him uncomfortable and forcing him into a read that could turn into a turnover. Guys up front are the guys that make that happen. And R. Mason Thomas, Grayson Halton, those are the two guys that I'm looking at to be disruptive forces in the Texas backfield. Who do you have on defense?
See, I got a guy up front, but I'm going with Dominic Williams. I feel like this is he's had his moments, but this needs to be his big welcome to Oklahoma football game. And the second guy I'm going with is Billy Bowman.
Yes.
He had a big game last year, and that's what this secondary has to play their best game of the season. And it starts with Billy Bowman, who's kind of the captain of that secondary.
Mm-hmm.
And we need him just to play lights out when he can play physical. He was a second leading tackler in this game last year, and that needs just to be the same, if not better.
That's a good call. Both of those are good picks. We've got so much more to talk about. We haven't even got into the Longhorns yet, and that's coming up next. This is the Sooner Nation podcast. Thanks for hanging out with us. Oklahoma, Texas, Saturday at the Cotton Bowl. Sooners come into this game a heavy underdog. We're going to get into our score predictions later on as we get ready to close out the podcast. We also have the over-under segment coming up where I'm going to ask the questions to Caleb this week. Let's break down a little bit some thoughts on the University of Texas. We spent the first part of this podcast talking extensively about Oklahoma, and we're going to keep talking about Oklahoma. But I think when you look at Texas's offensive and defensive strengths, to me, Caleb, with the Longhorns, it goes right back to the defensive side of the ball, just like Oklahoma. Now, Texas has played better offensively than what the Sooners have this season, but they're second nationally. I think I said they're the top scoring defense in the country in the first half of the podcast, but the reality is they're number 2 nationally, but they do lead the SEC, allowing just 7 points per game. And their turnover, I mean, they're opportunistic as well. They've recorded 7 interceptions through 5 games of this season, which leads the SEC. Oklahoma leads the SEC in fumble recoveries. Texas leads the conference in interceptions, and they're number 13th nationally. Another thing that's a big deal for Oklahoma has been how bad the Sooners play on third down offensively. Well, the Longhorns are 8th nationally in third down conversion defense. They allow their opponents just to convert on 27.8% of their third down plays. So that's just barely. I mean, you're just a hair over of 1 out of 4 times on third down, you're going to get a first down. So this defense has been pretty stellar. And I know people, and you're going to do this, and I'm going to agree with you. You're going to question the level of the opponent that they're playing through these first 5 games of the season. But the reality is you play the guy in front of you, and what they've done has been impressive.
Yeah, and there's no arguing that. And I get that their schedule hasn't been a gauntlet, but those easy wins, they're easy wins. They looked good in those games. They did exactly what they were supposed to do in those games. So it is be one thing if, they going up against UTSA, UL Maroon, Colorado State, all those, and they struggled. These were,
Uh-huh.
1 to 2 possession games, but they were all blowouts. They did exactly what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, the most points they've given up this season happened their last time out against Mississippi State when they gave up 13 points to the Bulldogs. They gave up 12 to Michigan. You mentioned Colorado State, 0 points, UTSA, 7 points, 3 points to Louisiana Monroe. On the flip side of that, they scored 50 plus against Colorado State. They scored 56 against Utah, UTSA. And they scored 51 against Louisiana Monroe. This team, offensively, they have outscored their opponents 56-0 in the first quarter alone. We talked about the need for Oklahoma to get off to a fast start offensively, to not stall out of the gate. This is the reason why. This Texas team, they come out swinging.
Yeah, and it they have looked impressive, and I get that schedule again hasn't been the best, but Oklahoma has to come ready in this first quarter. We have to win third downs,
Mm-hmm.
and we have to not that not just third downs, but we have to continue to play football for all 4 quarters. And that's something we just haven't seen out of this Oklahoma team yet.
Yeah, and here's the other thing that Oklahoma has to get ready for, because that goal line stand in last year's game was such a huge momentum shift for the entire game. I mean, you just felt confident as an Oklahoma fan after they shut down the Longhorns on the goal line. But so far this season, Texas is 24 of 26 on red zone chances. That means when they get inside the 20, they've scored on 24 of the 26 times. 23 of those 24 scores have been touchdowns. They've got that part figured out, it seems like. So they're an opportunistic defense, just like Oklahoma has. They come out of the gate fast, like Oklahoma has not, and they're going to take advantage of opportunities when they get inside the red zone. That is a scary formula for success if you're an opposing defense or an opposing offense. And that's exactly what Oklahoma's walking into on Saturday. Again, you mentioned the schedule strength. I mentioned the schedule strength. Their two toughest opponents this season has been a Michigan team that's very underwhelming and a Mississippi State team that's probably the worst team in the SEC. But the reality is, again, you play the guys that are in front of you. You got to you can't walk into this game, I think. Well, I guess what I'm saying is you can't walk into this game under the arrogance of, well, Texas really hasn't played anybody. If they're playing air, these stats that they're putting out there are pretty impressive.
Yeah, 100%. And no, you summed it up perfectly. You play who's in front of you. And no, Oklahoma's schedule outside of Tennessee, not that impressive.
Right.
And we see a lot of struggles.
That's such a good point. Solid point.
And I'm not trying to knock down Oklahoma. I'm not saying that Texas is going to come in here and steamroll, but Texas has done exactly what they need to do this season so far. And you have to respect that, and you have to give them their props.
The Longhorns ranked 10th nationally in passing yards per game, 322. They ranked 39th nationally in rushing yards per game, 191.2. They're 7th nationally in points scored at 45. And as we talked about earlier, the number 2 nationally in points allowed, number 1 in the SEC at 7. You look at the most recent game against Mississippi State. Again, the Bulldogs, this isn't a shot at Texas, and it's just the sad state of affairs for Jeff Lebby at Mississippi State. But they are, in my opinion, hands down the worst team in the SEC. They scored 13 points. That's the season high for Texas. But I think it lets you know the level of opponent, because the Michigan game, the Wolverines scored 12, and that was in Ann Arbor. They gave up 13 to Mississippi State in Austin. Not even close to winning this game for the Bulldogs. The Longhorns win 35-13, 522 total yards of offense. To me, the two areas that I'm going to attack this Texas offense, if I'm going to be critical, It's going to be in the areas of penalties. They were penalized 8 times for 65 yards in that game against Mississippi State, and turnovers. You've mentioned multiple times, even before we got into previewing this game, how Texas is prone to turn the ball over. And those are the two areas. If I'm looking for a reason to be concerned about Oklahoma, it's those two things. It's penalties can kill drives, and turnovers put the ball in the hands of a dynamic young player that the Sooners have leading their offense. And so if I'm looking for, again, if I'm a Texas fan and I'm wanting to be concerned, I think I start there. What do you think? What's your opinion on this?
I think I agree with you. Um, you gotta make you gotta make Texas uncomfortable. We saw that last year, and we saw how that worked to OU's favor.
Mm-hmm.
Quinn Ewers is a good quarterback, but he's not a generational talent quarterback. He can make you pay on your mistakes,
Mm-hmm.
but also if you get to him, make him uncomfortable, you see what happens. He had, I think, 3 or 4 turnovers in this game last year. That was all the difference.
Right.
You know, he, I know he had one just terrible interception to start the game. And oh, what did OU do? They went down and they capitalized. They got 7 points. I believe on the Billy Bowman pick,
Uh-huh.
where no, I can't remember who
Well,
picked it off, but
Billy Bowman hits the
he
tight
blew the
end.
yeah, he
Right.
blows a play up. They get the ball. I'm pretty sure Texas ends up blocking the punt and scoring off of that. Stuff like that, you just can't. When you get the ball from this Texas team, you have to them pay. You have to punish them because that's how you get Quentin Ewers to shut down. And then I know people are talking about Arch Manning. You throw Arch Manning in there down, talking about a true freshman in this environment. I know people like, oh, look at the success Caleb Williams has had in that doing the same scenario. I don't think Arch Manning is anywhere near Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams was a generational talent. And so you make him uncomfortable. That is the key to success for this Oklahoma team is you got to make Quentin Ewers uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think when you talk about key players on for the Longhorns, we mentioned the ones for the Sooners. We mentioned Michael Hawkins Jr., but I think the guy for the Texas offense has to be Quinn Ewers as well. I think you go to that quarterback position for all the reasons that you just mentioned. He's a little bit of a gunslinger mentality, so he's prone to turn the ball over, but he's also got a young quarterback with a generational name, not just a talent, but a generational name on the back of his jersey. That's kind of like the crowd favorite. And so any mistake that Quinn Ewers makes on Saturday is going to be amplified because everyone's kind of like, let's go to Arch Manning. Let's not waste our time with Quinn Ewers anymore. Let's go to Arch Manning. He's the future. The future is now type thing. And so it's not just pressure that he's going to feel from the Oklahoma defense. He's going to feel it from the stands as well. And he's not a young kid. He's seasoned. He's been in the college game for a long time. Like Jackson Arnold, he's one of the top paid players on this Texas team. He's got to earn the money, but with that money comes the responsibility and the pressure. This is going to be because of what Manning did while Ewers was injured. This is going to be the most pressure that Ewers has felt from the fan base in a game, I think, for the entirety of his career.
I would agree. And I think I messed up. I think I called Arch Manning a true freshman. I think he's a redshirt
He's a red
freshman.
shirt, yeah.
But my guy to look out for on this Texas offense is Isaiah Bond.
Okay.
That guy, he is a fantastic football player, and he's everything you want in a receiver. And the knock on Texas was they lost their 5 top targets, but they got a guy in Isaiah Bond.
Mm-hmm.
And slowing him down is going to be one of the biggest matchups on the fields Saturday is who's going to be on him and who can kind of make sure to shut him down. And part of shutting him down is getting to Quentin Ewers and make sure that he's not comfortable throwing the ball and he's making those bad decisions and he's just doesn't have time to throw the ball.
Give me a defensive guy for the Longhorns that you're kind of concerned about, that you're going to keep an eye on.
I'm gonna go Anthony Hill Jr.
Okay.
He's a really fantastic linebacker. He kind of, his stat lines hasn't been the most impressive this season, but he's kind of been playing that same role Danny Sussman has for this Oklahoma defense is he's gonna have quiet games. He's not gonna blow up the stat line, but he's gonna make the plays. Plays are gonna be made because of what he does.
Mhm.
He's gonna go clog a gap. He's going to go blow up the play in the backfield and force bad decisions and force the plays to go where they're not supposed to go, when that they were not designed to go.
That's a good pick. I'm going to go. I'm going to go with the guy who is a true freshman, and that's edge Colin Simmons. He's got 4 sacks this season, which leads the FBS freshman, and he ranks 7th overall in the SEC in total sacks. I'm going with him because what we're saying about Quinn Ewers applies to Michael Hawkins Jr. What Oklahoma wants to do to Quinn Ewers to make him uncomfortable, they want to do all of that and more to Michael Hawkins because he is the true freshman making the start in the Cotton Bowl in this rivalry, and guys like that are going to be the dudes that come in and try to make that pressure. When you look at key matchups between Oklahoma and Texas, we know you and I are on different sides of the offensive line. I said that's about as good as it's going to get. You think that they're still going to gel a little bit more. They're still going to get a little bit more healthy. They're still going to get better. The offensive line is going to be put to the test by this defensive pass rush from the Longhorns. That's, again, everything we're saying for Quinn Ewers applies to Michael Hawkins Jr. And it's really going to be, in my opinion, who stands up to the pressure more.
Yeah, 100%. Colin Simmons was one of the ones I was looked at, and he's been fantastic this year. And like you said, that's going to be a big matchup. And I do disagree with you on the offensive line. I do think we're going to continue to get better. I don't think there's going to be a leaps and bounds difference, but I do think there's going to be enough difference to kind of see this offense to get up and going a little bit more than what we have.
Is there anything else you that comes out as far as a strength for the Texas Longhorns offensively or defensively that we didn't jump into?
I don't think so. Not off the top of my head.
Well, let's talk about the key matchups in this game between the Sooners and the Longhorns. For me, of course, I mentioned Oklahoma's offensive line against the Texas pass rush, but man, I feel like Oklahoma's running game against that defensive front of the Longhorns is a vital matchup, because if the Longhorns control that line of scrimmage and they shut down Oklahoma's rushing attack, that makes life all the more miserable for Michael Hawkins Jr. But if Oklahoma can grind out yards, and I know you mentioned Taylor Tatum earlier, Javonte Barnes, I think it's going to be a 3-headed monster. I wouldn't be surprised to see not like a wishbone type formation, but some offense with all 3 of those guys, Hawkins, Barnes, Tatum, all there together and with some option and some misdirection, that kind of thing. I think Oklahoma, it is imperative that the Sooners run the ball effectively, because that gives so many more things that Michael Hawkins Jr. can do. If they can't run the ball, that does not bode well for this Oklahoma offense. So to me, that's the most vital matchup there is between the Sooner defense and the between the Sooner offense and the Texas defense.
I would completely agree with you. I mean, th this run game has to be established against this Texas team, because where they're the weakest is they have a decent secondary, but their weakest is in their back. If you can get plays downfield, if you can get those tight ends open in the middle, that is where Oklahoma can live and this kind of be able to capitalize. But that all goes away if you can't run the ball more than a yard.
Yeah. What else you got? What's another key matchup that we haven't brought up yet?
I'm going to go this Texas receiver room. against Oklahoma
Yes.
secondary. You
Yes.
know, Oklahoma secondary has kind of been the uh the worst on this Oklahoma defense, kind of been the most concerning. This is a very good Texas receiver room. They have a lot of young guys, they have some experienced guys, and if you can shut them down, their running backs aren't great. They're talking about, Oklahoma's receiver room's banged up. That's Texas running back room.
Hmm.
They still got a couple good running backs, but where they want to live is the passing game. So if you can take that away, those receivers away, that's kind of where Oklahoma can live and start really seeing those big plays develop defensively.
Yeah, and we mentioned Simmons earlier for Texas. I'm going to respond also with R. Mason Thomas for Oklahoma. And everything I said about Colin Simmons applies again to R. Mason Thomas. He's tied for fifth nationally, and he leads the SEC with 5.5 sacks. And all of those sacks, all 5.5, have come in the last 3 games. 3 against Tulane, half a sack against Tennessee, and then 2 at Auburn. Of the 5.5 sacks, 5 of them have been in the fourth quarter. Bringing pressure. I mean, we're beating a dead horse, but how do you go up against physical, athletic receivers and beat them? Well, first of all, you got to take away the hot read. Then you got to make the quarterback look downfield, and that's where pressure comes in. If you can take away the hot route and make him drop into turn a 3-step drop into a 5-step or even a 7-step, then suddenly you've got time to get defensive linemen crashing from the sides or linebackers or somebody else, a safety blitzing at the middle to get in on that quarterback and disrupt the play. The weakness of Oklahoma's defense, I agree with you, has been the guys on the corners, those guys on the islands. You got to give them help by bringing the pass rush and not letting Ewers have the time to set up and go deep. Guys like R. Mason Thomas, guys like Ethan Downs, those are the guys that are going to be critical to that happening. I think there is for me, there's an X factor. Anything else you want to talk about in terms of X's and O's and key matchups?
I think we really kind of talked about everything I was going to talk about.
Okay, so there's a key X factor here to me that I think it's obvious, plain as day. I'm not going to say it first. I'm going to see what you've got in the terms of a potential X factor.
My X factor, I kind of have two
Okay.
on the defense. The first one is Danny Stutzman. Danny
Okay.
Stutzman made a lot of Texas players, Texas fans mad after
Yeah, he
last
did.
year's game, and they're gonna be going after him. And how does he respond?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm okay if they want to send 3 people after Danny Stutzman because that's gonna free up other talented people on this defense
Right.
to go make plays. But how is he gonna respond mentally if it's fourth quarter, they're down? Can he allow those? Because it's gonna happen. He's gonna get pushed after the plays. There's gonna be some late hits on him. How does he respond to that?
Mm-hmm.
And how does he step up and make plays? Can he be to where, okay, send 3 guys after me, but I'm still gonna fight him off and go make plays? What is he gonna do? And my second X factor is Dominic Williams. If he can dominate the front like he has
Right.
been, that's a big, big key to success. Because again, take away this run game, they're going to have to pass. And I get that Oklahoma secondary, I just said that they have not been the best, but I would much rather have it to where Ethan Downs and R. Mason Thomas can just pin their ears back and go after Quinn Ewers on third and longs
Mm-hmm.
instead of, okay, what do we got to do on third and shorts? And how do you do that? The middle has to be dominated, and Dominic Williams has shown that he can do that.
Okay, and I agree with those, and I think those are great. The Danny Stutzman thing is fantastic because he has to live up to the hype. I mean, this is a this is a legacy setting game for Danny Stutzman. If you go out there and you get physically pushed around and beat up and abused, then it leaves a mark on your legacy. But even if Oklahoma doesn't win this game, but Danny goes out there and delivers 8 to 15 tackles, is all over the field, and is hyping up the defense and doing what we know he's capable of doing, what he's done his entire career. I mean, you did what you could. You did your part, and so that is a legacy defining moment, in my opinion, for Danny Stutzman, because we all know this is his last game against Texas. But my X factor is not a position or a player; it's a stat, and that's the turnovers. This game has an Oklahoma team that ranks 4th nationally in turnovers gained. They're at 13. And their 3rd nationally in turnover margin at plus 1.6 per game. They're playing a Texas team that's tied 67th nationally with 7 turnovers lost, and they ranked 46th in turnover margin at just 0.4. Now, we talked about last year, Oklahoma got 3 turnovers from Texas. The Sooners turned the ball over 0 times against Texas. You said it. I'm just reinforcing it. Turnovers are critical in this atmosphere, in this environment, in this game. And here's the thing, Caleb. Here's the biggest thing. On the season, the Sooners are 4-0 when they win the turnover battle. They've only lost 1 game this year, and that was to Tennessee. And guess what else? They lost the turnover battle in that game. So that's my X factor. You can talk about X's and O's. You can talk about special teams. I think that's another potential highlight, but it's going to come down to turnovers. You get the ball, you get bonus possessions. You give the ball away, you give the other offense bonus possessions. It really is that easy. It really is that simple. Is it not?
No, 100%. I love everything you said. Oklahoma has to, we're going to live and die by the turnovers. We saw that with the Auburn game, a team that was so
right
prone to turnovers. When they finally made that turnover, it was the biggest play of the game.
Mm-hmm.
You can talk all you want about the Hawkins touchdown run, the Hawkins throw to J.J. Hester, but the biggest play that day for the Oklahoma Sooners was the pick 6, the KIP 6. Oklahoma's going to have to force turnovers, and they're going to have to recover the turnovers. And then on the other side of the ball, Oklahoma's going to have to take care of the ball.
Yeah, I think that's going to be whether that stat alone is going to determine whether Oklahoma's got a puncher's chance as we go into the 4th quarter of this game on Saturday. We've got the over-under coming up. I'm asking the questions to Caleb. We've got the SEC rundown, and then we've got our score predictions for Saturday's Red River Rivalry game between the Sooners and the Longhorns. Thanks for hanging out with us. This is the Sooner Nation Podcast. All right, Caleb, are you ready? It is over-under time. This is the part of the podcast where I throw out a random stat. They're not really that random, but I throw out a stat, and you're going to tell me whether it will be over or under in this game and your reasoning for why. Are you ready? I got 5. There's 5 for you. Are you ready for them?
I'm ready.
Okay, here we go. The Texas Longhorns, 322 yards passing per game this season. That's their average. Against the Sooners on Saturday, will they be over or will they be under?
I'm going to say under. This Texas offense, yes, they have looked good, but they have not played a defense the caliber of Oklahoma's defense.
Okay.
And I expect if Texas does kind of get up, I expect Texas to kind of play more conservative to limit the big plays, because I feel like Steve Sarkisian knows the way you win this game is you don't turn the ball over and you don't give momentum to this Oklahoma team. And I just don't expect them to be throwing it that much. And I don't expect them to be able to have much success throwing the ball all day long. So I'm going to go under.
Okay. I think I agree with you on that. This is big. We talked about how good Texas is on 3rd down defense. We all know how bad Oklahoma is on 3rd down offense, but These are critical moments in a drive that can make or break what you put on the scoreboard. Third down, I'm just going to throw it out there, 50% third down conversion rate for the Sooners on Saturday. Will they be over or under on 50% conversion rate on third down?
And that's a tough one. Um, I'm gonna say over.
Oh, okay.
I think that this is going to be a different style of Oklahoma offense than what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be a different pace of the Oklahoma offense we're going to see. I think we're going to be more creative on first downs to allow us to be in second and third and manageables instead of second and third and forevers. So I'm going to go over.
Okay, I'm going to disagree with you, but but this is your turn to answer the questions. But I'm 1-for-1 with you. I agree with the first one, disagree with the second one. Here's the third win: total yards by Oklahoma on Saturday. Total offensive yards by the Sooners. I set it at 300. That's going to be a lot. That's going to be, more than I've gotten through the first 4 games. Will they be over or under 300 yards of offense on Saturday?
I'm going to say under.
Okay.
I do think that this Oklahoma team is going to take the slow down approach and not run as many plays and chew up as much clock as possible. So I think they're going to try to control the clock more than control yards. So I'm going to go under.
Okay. I think I agree with you again now. 1.5 turnovers forced by the Oklahoma defense against Texas on Saturday. Will the Sooners force more or less than 1.5?
I'm going to take the over. I think they're going to force more than 1.5 just because we've seen this Texas team give up the ball more than 2 times against lesser defenses. I think that this Oklahoma defense is going to make Texas uncomfortable, and that's going to cause turnovers. We've seen how good they are at ripping the ball out of running backs' hands, ripping the ball out of quarterbacks' hands. Going back to this Texas running back room being beat up, you have a lot of guys that probably would be touching the field if they were fully healthy. So you have a lot of chances to kind of force those fumbles on some inexperienced guys. So I'm gonna say over.
Okay, here's the last one. And we talked about the importance of Oklahoma running the ball against the Longhorns on Saturday. To a good running game is 4 yards or greater per carry. I'm not going that high. I'm going to bring it down to 3.5. Does Oklahoma average more or less than 3.5 yards per carry against the Longhorns on Saturday?
Man, that's a tough one because my gut says under just because of how terrible our running game has been. But again, you kind of look at what Michael Hawkins can do, and we know how they like to use Jackson Arnold in the run game. I expect us to use Michael Hawkins just as much in the run game. And for that reason alone, I'm going to go over.
Okay. I think Michael Hawkins is the catalyst to get them over as well. Sooners and Longhorns, to me, are obviously the biggest game in the conference on Saturday. But the other big rivalry game is Florida, Tennessee. That game is going to be played in Knoxville. 6 p.m. kickoff. I wish Oklahoma, Texas had that night game, but it is what it is. You got South Carolina at Alabama, Missouri playing Massachusetts, Mississippi State against Georgia. Now, here's the 2 games, honestly, that carry interest for me. 6:30, you've got Ole Miss, LSU, number 9 versus number 13. Both of those programs with 1 loss on the season, but Ole Miss's loss is in conference play. This is a huge game for the Rebels on the road, but also it's a huge game for LSU at home to reestablish themselves as being an actual contender in the SEC title. And then after that, you've got Vanderbilt and Kentucky. The Wildcats still not ranked. I mean, 3-2, it's hard to be ranked, but they're 1-2 in SEC play. Vandy coming in after beating Alabama, playing this Kentucky defense. suddenly that's a game that's worth at least peeking in on, score peeking here and there, right?
Yeah, and kind of the same thing for me applies to Vandy as we kind of apply to Alabama. Are they going to come in hungover? Are they going to come in, we just beat the number one team, Kentucky's nothing to us?
Mm-hmm.
How are they going to respond? Because, you look at this, if Vandy comes in and they win this road game, I don't remember the last time Vandy is ranked, but I think there's a very good chance that Vandy comes sneaks into the top 25 next week.
Yeah,
So this is
I don't see how you don't rank them. If they beat Alabama and then they go on the road and beat Kentucky, who had offed Georgia, yeah, I don't see how you don't rank them. In fact, I would even say the same thing for Kentucky. If they win this game after beating Georgia, you beat the team that just unseated Alabama, you got to rank Kentucky. I think the winner of this game either way gets ranked.
Kentucky did not beat Georgia, they beat Ole Miss.
That's what I said, Ole Miss. I don't know why you're talking Georgia out here. That's crazy. They
They
went
lost
toe
to,
to they went toe to toe with Georgia. They
yeah, they
beat
lost
Ole
by
Miss.
one, but they did not beat them.
I maintain my point, sir.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like unless it's like an ugly like 6-3 game and looks like neither one of those teams should have won, I feel like one of those two teams are going to be ranked. Well, the winner of that game should be ranked
Right.
here come next week.
That's
Now,
all I was trying to say.
I would kind of like to see Vandy ranked because again, I can't tell you when the last time Vandy was ranked. So for me, I would like to see that happen.
Well, the big game for us is Oklahoma, Texas, ABC, 2:30 kickoff. Sooners are a 15.5-point underdog in this game. According to ESPN's matchup predictor, Texas has an 85% chance to win. The over-under set right now at 50.5 points. Money line, Sooners are plus 475. The Longhorns minus 650. Caleb, give me your score prediction here.
I got 31-21 Texas.
Dude, it amazes me how close we are. And I'm actually shocked. I'm going to say I'm proud of you, but I'm shocked that you picked Oklahoma to lose because to my understanding, to my recollection, this is the first time you've picked the Sooners to lose this season.
Correct.
All right. All right. Well, I'm tell me again, you said 31-21?
Correct. So I have us covering, but I do have us losing.
So you have the Sooners covering and you have the over hitting. I'm with you. I have Oklahoma covering. I have the over, but I have it 3 more points for the Sooners. I've got 31-24 Texas winning this game. And look, you can come out of this game. I don't believe in moral victories, but if you're Oklahoma, you can come out of this game having lost and still realize that the future is young and bright and talented for this program, right?
Yeah, and not only that, but this is how they bounce back. Because you go in, you lose to Texas, the number one team in the country, you make it respectable. There's still a lot of good for the rest of the season.
Right.
To where if you come in and get blown out, there's a lot of question marks that pop up. But if you come in and you lose 31-21, 31-24, there's a lot to hang your head up on.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'm with you. I don't agree on moral victories, but there still can be a lot of good taken away from a loss to a good Texas team.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you got a very winnable game coming up at home the week after and then the rest of your conference schedule. So regardless of how it goes down Saturday in the Cotton Bowl, we'll be back to talk about it. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here on the Sooner Nation podcast. We'd love to hear back from you. You can hit us up on Twitter at Sports Heartland. You can find us every day on the website, heartland-sports.com. He's Caleb. I'm Matt. Have a fantastic weekend. Enjoy your college football.
I'm gonna be the man who's working hard.